4 countries in our current phase of the program, and yeah, my examples will be from Tanzania, from Dar es Salaam. So if I could go to the next slide, please. Right. I mean, this is just quick overview of what we're doing. In the natures, we sort of included the natural environment, natural resources, because a lot of it is involved. It's not just water stewardship, but the things we do impact natural resources. And the work we're doing currently under the Natures 2 program is we look at zones, but sort of interpreted into economic zones as in cities, or economic zones as in special economic zones like industrial zones, or we can also look at catchments where we have quite a lot of agriculture and others set up. So we're sort of addressing that in various ways. And the red text that you see on that slide is just an outline of some of the more regular and common threats on natural resources in these contexts. And since I'll be looking at presenting examples that focus mainly on Dar es Salaam, I'll just give you a quick overview to contextualize Dar es Salaam. So the next slide, please. In Dar es Salaam, just to give you a bit of an understanding, don't know how many people have been here, but yeah, it's one of the fastest growing cities in Africa at the moment. From a report that I'm referencing here, it was 6 million people in 2018. But I think the important aspect here is also the high growth rate, 5.6% per year, and estimates see Dar es Salaam at 10 million at the end of this decade. So that in itself is already a major challenge to provide services in a city that's growing as fast. And then some of the 3 bits I'm referencing there is like the non-revenue water, or the water coverage, but also the very low sewage coverage and the relatively low solid waste disposal in the city, sort of make it a lot more of an uphill challenge for a city like Dar es Salaam then to be able to deliver these services, but also be prepared for what the climate change and the effects of climate change is basically throwing at Dar es Salaam, and throwing at people who are managing the city. So I'll be focusing mainly on the water side a bit of, and for that I'll like you to go to the next slide, just to see how Dar es Salaam is already impacted by climate change. So first of all, we sort of take it from the scarcity side, drought. It's becoming a regular occurrence that Dar es Salaam is rationing supplies when we have extended periods of low flows. So you see a few recent clippings in the news here highlighting the issue, and I think it's important to put that into context. The main supply for Dar es Salaam is the Ruvo River. There's 2 water treatment works on the river. And with 90% coming from that, if the volume of water in that river drops below a certain level, then the amount of water extracted daily is a challenge, and they won't be able to meet the demand from that side. So that's a big question. That at the bottom, there's another clipping. It says Tabasa takes charge of Kedunda dams. So this is something that will hopefully come online in 2025. It's a dam that's upstream of the treatment works to provide more regulated flow in the dry season to ensure the levels in Ruvo River are sufficient for meeting urban supply demands. The final challenge that you can probably see looking at the figures is that the demand is already very close to the actual capacity. And at the moment, there is no projects in advanced stages that sort of will augment the production and supply capacity. So the next challenge will also then look at non-revenue water and, well, meeting the ever-growing demand of the 5.6% growth rate. To the next slide, please, and we'll take a look at what that already currently means in terms of the flip side of drought. We have flooding. We're moving into the main rainy season here in Dar es Salaam, nicely overcast today. And we've done some work in Dar es Salaam from 2018 to 2020 under the City Finance Facility C40 work. Similar work was done in eThekwini and I think also in Durban in South Africa. But here we're looking at flooding. And yeah, these occurrences are regular now. They're regular occurrences. We now have, I don't know, 1, 2, sometimes 3 flood events that impact a large number of people. And the reference event is usually the April 2018 flood, where the city saw 180 millimeters. And below you see some estimates of the impact on economic losses and how many people were impacted. And they're quite staggering figures, and this is only going to increase in the years to come with more urbanization, more sealed areas, more degraded catchments upstream. So all of that, you know, increasing the challenge for Dar es Salaam. And then finally, on the next slide, I want to sort of then move on to the wastewater challenge. We saw it already on the first slide for Dar es Salaam. Only 13% of the population is served by sewers. Also, and this is only 9 systems that are providing treatment through stabilization ponds. And the city center is just discharging its wastewater directly through ocean outfall into the Indian Ocean. There is a wastewater treatment plant under development, but that will only provide a limited amount of treatment, only 16 million liters a day, and that compared to the overall demand is quite little. The picture that you see, and this is sort of the launch point for taking it into our space, into the stewardship space, is the Malakura River. And this was actually one of the first stewardship partnerships at that time under the African Water Stewardship Initiative, and then I was later, that looked at a river, or the Malakura River restoration. And that work sort of looked at solid waste and other things, but we did, right towards the end of that in 2016, we did wastewater quality analysis. And the results that came back from that was that none of the discharge was actually complying to the national standards. And the clipping that you see at the bottom right of this slide, and this is only from a year ago when it was published, comes to well, the same findings in 3 of the main rivers, which they classify as severely polluted from unregulated and untreated municipal as well as industrial wastewater, and yeah, the call for more source control and end treatment. And this is then the stepping stone into our work. The next slide for me there, please. Because then looking at the challenge, knowing that there's hundreds of industries that are discharging, and none of the ponds, or very few ponds only, and everything else not very regulated, we started the discussion back in 2018 with the different authorities from water, environment. We're talking to utilities, we're talking to local government. And we're wondering, how do we tackle this? Not just for a handful of industries, but how would we tackle a problem like wastewater in the context of a large city like Dar es Salaam, or in the context of a country like Tanzania? So we looked around and eventually ended up with addressing this through a special economic zone, an export processing zone, a small industrial area in the heart of Dar es Salaam, the Benjamin William Mkapa special economic zone. And it's also the headquarters of the Export Processing Zone Authority that is managing these areas throughout Tanzania. There's not very many at the moment, but there is a vision to create more. It's part of the 5-year development plans to take Tanzania onto this pathway of industrialization and middle-income country, and all the things that are sort of on the radar of government here. So in this diagram, you'll just see what the main focus of the partnership was. I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm sure these slides will also be shared, so you can have a look at that in a little bit more. If we can jump to the next slide, please. It's just an aerial photograph of the zone. So it's not a very big zone, but it provided a very good sort of nurturing ground where we could actually have the discussions on industrial wastewater specifically. And in this zone, we actually have about 20 different entities. Some are just packaging. Some make things like credit cards. But the main tenant in this zone is a apparel company that makes jeans from imported denim. So they do a lot of washing and cutting and stitching up the garments. And they operate a wastewater treatment plant. And they have to show environmental compliance. And then we have a small sewer system inside the zone and a pumping station that transports that into the city network. So we approached this zone and we thought, how do we bring stewardship into this context? So we applied the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard, and we did an assessment on risks, water risk, wastewater inside the zone, and also opportunities for water use efficiency. But we also looked beyond the fence line of the zone to look at other aspects, water supply to industries, especially an industry that uses quite a bit of water, like this apparel garment entity. And we also looked at, well, if we have a wastewater treatment plant and this company is doing everything correctly, what happens downstream of that wastewater when it enters the sewer system of the city? So if you could please go to the next slide. Then here you can see the zone is a big red blotch on the left bottom, which is the Benjamin Mkapa Special Economic Zone. So that you can see the blue line, and there's some ponds circled there, which are the Mabibo ponds, one of the 9 systems of those sewage ponds in Dar es Salaam. But you can also see there's a much bigger network connected to the north of that, and here's other industries and other people that put water in. And when we looked at this, we looked at the different risks, and risk being water quality and quantity, etc. But we're also looking at regulatory risks, and we're looking at reputational risk. So reputational, maybe for a company like that entity producing garments, but also all the regulatory functions. So we use this little zone to actually really start a dialogue as to who is responsible for what. And if we take this here, we actually have the Export Processing Zone Authority responsible for permitting and the sewer network inside the zone. Then they hand it over to the network that's run by DAVASA, the Urban Water and Sanitation Authority, and their Mabibo ponds, but they also get other untreated industrial wastewater. And then they basically are responsible for the discharge of that wastewater from the pond system into the Mzimbazi River. And they hold a permit by the Vamiruvu Basin Water Board. And the overall oversight is by the National Environmental Management Council, NEMKI, that fall under the Ministry of Environment. So we unpacked this whole thing, and later on you can see there's a little picture insert that's actually linked up to a small video that explains exactly the different roles and responsibility, interviews some of the entities. And so we thought, okay, well, how do we manage this? And yeah, that's where the partnership was born. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, there we are. This is basically the stakeholder map. Is just to outline there's quite a number of players that become important when it comes to addressing this issue. I mean, this is not only for the wastewater, but also for water use or water coming in. But the context here is, well, how can we then manage for an entity like the Export Processing Zone Authority and to be able to provide that regulatory clarities for potential tenants and current tenants, and to make sure that those things, at least from the wastewater side, are very clear. And how can we see how that can help build more efficient water use practices, can provide the platform for actually getting into regulatory compliance when it comes to wastewater. And I'll explain a bit of that. And we also looked at through the AWS standard at WASH at work. So how well is everybody accessible, or all the workers have access to WASH facilities? But we also applied it to the immediate area around this zone, because that's where most of the workers actually live and come to work from. And there's 3,500 people work in these factories at the moment. They'll increase that to 5,500. So what's the situation for them at home, and what impact does it have for a private company in terms of health of their workforce and productivity of their workforce? So on the last two slides, I'll just quickly take you through some of the things that we have achieved so far. And I think these are, in my eyes, very good, and it's been it's taken us quite a lot of time. One is to develop a guideline for wastewater management. This is basically a guideline that provides guidance to tenants inside these special economic zones. And it's designed or made for the Export Processing Zone Authority. So this echoes the effluent discharge standard in Tanzania. We've also benchmarked this work against Namibia, South Africa, and Botswana, of what is being done in those countries in terms of the standards and how the charges are calculated. So we've managed to get this actually drawn up, and it was officially launched in December 2020. But at the same time, we were also looking at doing something on the overall permit management, because that was still paper-based, etc. And we had been requested by the Basin Water Board, Bamiruvu, the one responsible or under which the Dar es Salaam falls. And we supported them in developing an online permitting system. So with this, entities can now apply for a permit, and they also can do the payment through the government payment portals under this system. And this has been fully integrated into the Ministry of Water's Management Information System. So this has been done at the end of 2020. So now that system is available. So these are two of the main things. So this small economic zone actually provided the platform for us to develop this. And the permit system is a multi-agency system because we've got different entities that need to permit this, but it's also for water abstraction, so it serves two purposes. And then that's what we have done. And the last slide is on looking on where we're going with this. And this is where I think we'll hopefully see some transformational change, because we have now received some funding from the EU, for green smart cities in Tanga and in Mwanza. But we will continue with Dar es Salaam under funding that we have. And what we're going to do is we'll write these guidelines to then be applicable to basin water boards, because basin water boards manage the permits into the environment in the respective basin. There's 9 basins in Tanzania. And we'll also rewrite it for the urban water and sanitation authorities like DAWASA for managing the discharge into their sewer network. So with that, we can then hopefully see more of an uptake and operationalization of this, and then also roll out this VUMIS, or the multi-agency online permitting software, in Tanga, in Mwanza, and in Dar es Salaam, to hopefully then go through a staged approach. And I think this is where the nature of stewardship sort of is perhaps the deal breaker in my eyes, is that we're not looking at it primarily from the compliance angle, but we need to look at a process of how do we bring everybody on board to then also be able to play a role in actually discharging treated wastewater into the urban environment for human health, for the environmental health. There's a lot of concerns with that, water downstream being used for agricultural farming, urban farming, and those kind of things. So that we now have 3 basins and 3 cities. And potentially, if that works really well, then we have a national system whereby this can be applied to the 9 basins and to any city that also has sewer systems in place. So this process, I think, is really important. That maybe as a first target, we want to have procedural or administrative compliance with the permitting. So that means you actually get a permit, you pay for your permit, and you start reporting against the permit. And then we can use that data to see where the heat maps are for industrial wastewater and what to do about it, which industries need to do their own treatment, which could municipal wastewater treatment plants or zonal treatment plants be the solution, the more cost-effective solution. And then only in the 2nd or 3rd step should they then move into actually using the permits also for the discharge quality compliance. And the final note, and this is still scoping, we also now want to use the Alliance Water Stewardship Standard. And we've been, again, approached by the Ministry of Water and the Basin Water Board to take a look at the Ruvu catchment. So, the catchment that serves 90% of the water that supplies Dar es Salaam, and to help them set up partnership and activities in that catchment to also have nature-based solutions in that catchment, and see how we can involve private sector and other stakeholders in actually reforestation and reinstating that, be it, agricultural practices and so on. So this is more or less what I wanted to share with you. I think it's I find it encouraging. We've managed to get this far. We've now managed to get funding to actually support a rollout, a significant rollout, to really have proof of concept and proof of use for such a system. And this could eventually really be the change maker to put this firmly on the map and actually give decision makers data to manage and plan for infrastructure, but also demystify this space of for industry coming in. Where do I get my permit? Who do I pay? All these kind of questions that used to come up in the past, and also provide a solid platform on which the industry can then credibly state that they are environmentally compliant when it comes to water, wastewater, which is an increasing demand under ESG reporting and other things. So yeah, I'll leave it here. So thanks for your attention, and yeah, happy to receive questions, comments from here.
Thank you so much, Fritjof, for that very informative, but also scary presentation around the many challenges that the city faces. I'm going to now hand over to my colleague from SALGA, Zain Abdul. Zain is the Climate Change, Environment and Waste Specialist at the SALGA KZN office, to start us off with maybe some comments and also then take questions from the floor. We are going to unmute everybody and just allow people to then ask questions. If you can raise your hand so that Zain and Sadna can see who would like to post some questions. And also we have on the call with us the head of municipal sustainability at SALGA, Dora Marema. And we're very grateful that you've been able to give us this presentation, Fritjof. Very much similar to what we're facing in some of our South African cities as well, you know, rapid urbanization, the challenges of climate change, and the high demand on already scarce water resources. So I'll hand over to you, Zain. Thank you.
Thanks, Itebo, and thank you, Fritjof, for that excellent presentation. I think it outlines, especially the diagram at the beginning, it kind of neatly outlines the entire kind of system that a city or settlement, faces, in the interaction with the water system. And I think Itebo was quite right, is that a key issue that South African municipalities and cities are facing at the moment is this issue of water quality. And it's really affecting the water supply to a lot of cities. I know currently in Gauteng, they are facing huge water supply crisis at the moment. And I mean, I think we do have some participants. I see Isak is also here from Ekurhuleni as well. So yes, there is that, and also in eThekwini and KZN, we know with the spillage that took place during the looting of the chemical plant on the close to the Ashlanga River catchment, and that estuary is still feeling the effects now, a couple of years on. It hasn't fully recovered. So it's important to have a kind of an overview of the entire catchment area, especially looking at the downstream and upstream dynamics. So, I mean, you presented that quite clearly, especially with how specific points of your river system, of your catchment system, have things like your attenuation ponds, your wetland systems, your artificial wetland systems that also help to augment your wastewater treatment facilities along the river system. So I think that is quite clear and quite well presented. So I'm gonna actually open up now for some questions and comments from the participants. And Isak, and I think maybe I would like to start with you. I don't know if there's any initial comment you would like to make regarding that water security issue in Gauteng at the moment. I'm not sure if you're still with the Ekurhuleni. I'm pretty sure you are, but yeah, if you can come in on that, and then we can maybe get some other perspectives. I also see that we have Karina Singh, who's environmental officer at Mzunduzi municipality, which also faces very similar problems, given that Mzunduzi and eThekwini share a similar catchment with the Yamgeni River. So, Isak, if you have any comments. Yeah, I see there isn't any there from Isak. I don't know if there's an issue with the mic.
Maybe.
Yeah, it could be an issue with the mics.
And I don't see any questions or raised hands at the moment, Zain. But if I may ask my own, if that's okay, and then maybe we can get some of the participants to answer. Then we'll just move on to Mankhodi's presentation, and hopefully then people would have been more engaging and have thought about other aspects to ask around. So my question is around the institutional arrangements, Fritjof, with the special economic zones. You mentioned that it's a multi-stakeholder collaboration around, what needs to happen in these special economic zones and getting the private sector involved. How has that worked between the government, the municipality, and these different stakeholders? Who holds that convening of these different stakeholders? And is that structure being embedded in a particular municipality or in a particular government department, so that when the project that is funded by the GIZ ends, then there's that embedding and mainstreaming of these sort of structures and institutional arrangements? Thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's been one of the big challenges. And I mean, the early successes that we had is that we actually had authorities actually meet for the first time. There was everybody was in their silos doing their thing. And we basically just sort of in our discussions individually and then roundtables, we actually, finally got people's sort of attention, saying, well, each of you has roles to play here, but we need to be clear as to who comes in where and then how do we hand it over. And it's only a collaborative approach, and even just between the different agencies, that this problem can actually be handled. And the driving force between this for this at the moment is the Basin Water Board, because that's where the water supply, they're responsible for the water supply in. So they are taking sort of the lead function. We will also give them funding now through a financing agreement to do the capacity building of authorities, other basins, other users in the use of the platforms, and like the online permitting system. And then with that, we enter a new era that doesn't necessarily need that space anymore, but it needs that the discussion on how permitting is then later on handled. That's the very sort of dicey bit. You don't want to come in too hard on regulation and sort of now we've got a permit for this private company. Now let's hit them. It's a collective failure for now that there's no permits that have ever been issued. There's no proper oversight. So we all need to sort of agree that everybody holds a piece of the blame for a system that is not functioning the way it is. And I think from that perspective, we can step forward and say, all right, we all had a role to play in this. But if we all want to do something that improves, then it needs that dialogue, and we need to agree of how we reach to where we want to go. People understand this, and it's through the systems, it's anchored already in government systems, that there's good hope that the permitting will be done in good faith, not sort of from a policing perspective, but from trying to find ways in which collaborate you can do this, because private sector is interested in a big way, because they need to immunize themselves against reputation risk. They need to be able to show that they're compliant on their environmental footprint in so many ways. And so they have a reason to be there, and they have a reason to also want this. And important thing is, and I think with cholera cases after flooding, your workforce is sitting probably in those areas where there is no proper or insufficient wash services, right? So they are the ones who then are later on impacted by disease, etc. So then your workforce is not showing up to work. So a fantastic place to also start discussing between utility and private sector what they can do to help actually provide services for where the people that work for them live, in the interest of facilitating something that's beneficial. So I think we need to start looking more holistically at the opportunities. The challenges are there, but I think if we only look at the challenges and always say, can't somebody just sort it out? I think we're all somebodies and we can all help to sort it out. So, with a different mindset, I think there's a lot that we can do in the systems, in the organizations that we are. So, yeah.
Thanks, Zane. Back to you.
Yeah, I actually raised my hand for another question. Just to follow up, I think the permitting idea is quite innovative, and I'm not sure if it's to what extent it has been done in South African municipalities. I know there's an issue with policing and kind of enforcement. I'm just give you an example of the floods that took place in eThekwini in 2022. Illegal dumping sites in industrial zones along the river led to a lot of the blockages that resulted in the bursting of the banks at different areas of the river. And then the second problem is that the overflow from the failures of the wastewater treatment plants, also upstream, have resulted in a lot of E. coli that's been dumped into the river. Raw sewage has been dumped directly into the river channel. That's affected your quality of life, your estuarine life, and also it has affected the tourism on the beaches, because the beaches have to be closed because of the E. coli. So I'm looking at your practical tips around the permitting and as a way of enforcement and policing of this. I note also eThekwini did try to have some sort of informal stewardship. I won't call it a program, but where civil society or NGOs who were claiming that space, like Adopt Your River or Adopt a Wetland, those kind of NGOs, they got drones or they got canoes or boats that go upstream and regularly check the river banks or closing illegal dump sites. What would be, in your experience, obviously the Dar es Salaam experience, but in your experience, what would be maybe 2 or 3 kind of priority areas for setting up a kind of a stewardship program that tackles different issues, like illegal dumping is one, and also the wastewater treatment plant failures another?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for that question, Zane. Yeah, that's a solid question. I mean, maybe just on the permitting. I mean, we did, and this is the sort of multi-agency, because there's different agencies, and we actually went through business process mapping, etc., to ensure that what we have programmed or helped program is something that can be used by different. So we're not replicating this online platform, but we want to use it for the whole reporting cycle. So the next step now that we're moving into, we want to have self-reporting requirements from industry that the different regulators can then access and look at, and they can analyze the data. So we need to, I think, be asking more from the permit holders, like as in permit conditions. And then spot checks become easier if you see that there are some issues with data or things not credible. And ideally, with that, you create like a map. And something I would love to do, we haven't discussed it yet here in Tanzania, but to actually have all these adopt a wetland, all the civic space, be able to report. So have a platform that echoes where they can see where discharge points are, and then they can actually also say, put a hand up or send something and say, we'd like to report to some of the regulators, something is happening here. So sort of putting that more into a dialogue space, if you like. And yeah, in terms of setting up, really depends on purpose of the stewardship activities. But yeah, really important is to ensure you know what the objective is, and then with that objective, you look at the key stakeholders, and then you will sort of engage with them individually, but then you bring them together and see if there is enough energy in the room to actually come together and craft something. There's different frameworks out there. AWS, the Alliance Water Stewardship Standard, has got a 5-step approach. GIZ has done one on the last slide on our my presentation also has like an online training to something called the NRAF, which is the Natural Resources Action Risk and Action Framework. So that sort of takes you through the different phases that stewardship partnerships go. It's not a linear process. You can start anywhere, but it just gives good guidance, sort of what things that need to be in place for these partnerships, stewardship partnerships, multi-stakeholder partnerships, for those to function. So I hope that could address some of the things in your questions.
No, thanks so much. I think that idea of obviously of that mapping, of the creation of the map, really gives you a starting point to see, where your kind of problem areas are, and then.
Yeah, I mean, it's also for all sorts of planning, and in the end, you can see if I have a big agglomeration of industry, that's where I need to think of infrastructure to help sort out that problem. So it's I mean, without that, we're constrained in our decision making ability. So it's that is important, and we thought I didn't want to just have something that just sits with some industries. We help them sort of meet all the things. What do we do systemic to help move this forward? And so we'll hope that this has a systemic impact. We'll see once we start engaging sort of in more players, more actors, how we progress. We'll update at some venues on how we're getting on with it.
All right. Thank you so much, Fritjof. We're now going to move to our next presenter, Mankgodi. I hope you're able to unmute yourself now. And I'm going to ask Kopano to please share your slides. Ms. B, if you can let Kopano share. I'm not sure if he will be able to do it in slideshow mode. Let's try. If not, then it's okay. Kopano?
It seems I still don't have the rights.
Still don't have those sharing rights. Okay, let me share from my side, and then we can take it from there. Mankgodi, I see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon, colleagues.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Apologies
now we can hear you.
I'm actually seated outside Beachwood Hotel in Ekwaya somewhere because we were attending the biodiversity in Dava. So, however, thank you so much for this opportunity, colleagues. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide, Deborah. Are you able to hear me? Colleagues?
Yes,
yes, I can hear you from my side.
Can hear you.
Okay, or it's the slide that is stuck. No, while they're still sorting the issue of the slide, I just thought we will just give a brief overview of the city of Ekurhuleni in terms of its hydrological features, and obviously now we're wrapping up water month, and and this chat just became relevant to just indicate some of the challenges that we have. So while I just wanted to indicate is why they're sorting out the slides is what Fridge was presenting is some of the challenges at City of Ekurhuleni we have. However, in South Africa, in terms of permitting, I heard Zain was asking from Ishak's perspective, was that in terms of the competent authority, the Department of Water and Sanitation, for water use licenses, they have an online permitting system that we run with it, and obviously then we still have issues with aging infrastructure and unmaintained infrastructure that then pollute our aquatic system. So those are some of the challenges that are not only unique to Dar es Salaam, that here, even in South Africa, from the city of Ekurhuleni perspective, we are also facing those challenges. So yeah, but it's quite it was really a mouthful presentation to see what they are facing and the solution that they're coming up with. So maybe I think into detail from a cities network, we need to get the official from water and sanitation, particularly around wastewater treatment management, so they can share knowledge with them in that regard, because I think we've made quite a lot of strides, and then they can probably learn from that. So yes, you can go to the next slide. This is just the contents of what I'm going to be talking about. This one is just, I'm just giving a view of the city of Ekurhuleni's hydrological system. And here, as you see here on the map, it just shows where we are as the city of Ekurhuleni within the Gauteng province. But however, here I just also inserted the map of our hydrological features. So you can see the ones highlighted in blues is actually our catchment within the city. That is why city of Ekurhuleni is actually nicknamed the city of waters, because we've got so many water features within our jurisdictions that even some of the development, they just go ahead even within a catchment. You only see that the result after a year, the walls peeling off to say, hey, you just built on a wetland or catchment. So this is really where we are. And the significance of us as the city of Ekurhuleni, we have the Ramsar site, the Blesbok catchment is actually within our jurisdiction, and the Blesbok catchment it fits into the Suikerbos catchment, which is part of the Vaal River. And the Vaal River, obviously, then in Gauteng, all of us, we get our dam from the Vaal Dam. So it just shows you the significance of where we are as a city, and also due to the flat landscape that we have as the city of Ekurhuleni, that we have now sitting on a continental divide. What that means is that we've got some of our water system that are draining into the Atlantic Ocean, while the others are draining towards the Indian Ocean. So even if we say we are deep rooted in the inland in the city, whatever we do in inland can impact ultimately what is happening in what our oceans receive. So whatever it is that we do impacts both the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. Next slide, please. Okay. So I was still just saying, even within our aquatic system, we obviously then in this regard zooming into the natural feature. We have natural resources that this aquatic system provide, and we also they provide ecosystem services, including capturing and storing rainwater, as well replenishing groundwater aquifers, and it just shows you to highlight also the significance of the water week. Water within our aquatic system is all our species cannot survive if we don't have water within our aquatic system. So and both our aquatic system are biodiversity hotspot and habitat for birds and other species. So those are some of the things that so we have, and they provide fresh water and habitats and fighting negative climate change impacts. So and within the city as an important hydrological feature, the wetlands are among the most productive life support system that we have, not only in Ekurhuleni as well as in the world. So next slide, please. So one of the things that we are struggling with regards to alien invasive species, we have them as a threat to our hydrological system. Obviously, then we have a lot of threats that are facing our natural system. And the topping that list is climate change. Then we have degradation of the natural system. Then we have pollution. Then we have alien invasive species coming at number 4 as one of the threats to natural system. And in this case, we're talking about a hydrological system. And as I've indicated, what is at stake now at the city of Ekurhuleni is the fact that hydrological system within the city of Ekurhuleni are superimposed. So whatever it is that the impact on our system, it ultimately affects basically the whole of South Africa because of the flat nature of how the city of Ekurhuleni it is. So ultimately, what is it that what we do? We have with our last assessment, we have identified we have 214 water bodies that feeds into all our catchment within our system. So ultimately, the alien invasive are threat to those aquatic system. And what are alien invasives are introduced species who spread threaten indigenous biological diversity. Or biodiversity, we're talking about your plants and animals that obviously depend on this hydrological system for their survival. Also as habitat, and also as a breeding ground for like your bullfrog pen. They use your wetlands, for particularly during a breeding season. So those are some of the species that are really being threatened by alien invasive species. And alien invasive species that are characterized by rapid reproduction and growth, high special ability, the ability to survive in a wide range of environmental conditions because of the fact that they do not have natural enemies, because they come from other systems and they come into or other areas. Now they are introduced into our system and now they threaten our hydrological system. And they are cause most of the it's actually quite funny because most of our introduced invasive species that are now highly invasive is that most of them, they came in as for agricultural trade, ornamental purposes, and pet trade. And with us in Ekurhuleni, we are struggling with the invasion of water hyacinth, which is the one in the corner with the machinery. The water hyacinth is invading all our water system, and your blue gums, and they will even nickname blue gum as a water thirsty plant. And obviously then this changes the whole ecological character of the system, and how then the amount of water that we are supposed to release through the system, and ultimately that must end into the Val Dam or other dams, then it minimizes already the scarcity. It contributes to the scarcity of water that we already have. So yeah, so that is what the impact is. Just go through. Next slide, please. Okay, I've already got ahead of myself in terms of the impacts of water hyacinth, and I heard somebody else saying, or even earlier last year, they had to close the beaches due to the E. coli that was in the that was being released there. So some of those impact that we have, both economically and also the ecosystem, and also human livelihoods and health, animal health. So the impact of alien invasives into species are quite severe, that are significant in the growing threat to South Africa's natural agriculture and urban ecosystem, as well as human livelihoods. They basically wreak havoc to our fragile ecosystem. As you can see, even from the photometric evidence that I've displayed, it's not aesthetic to look at this aquatic ecosystem, and this consume a lot of water. So you can imagine, what it does, even also to the animal life that are supposed to depend on this ecosystem for survival. Next slide, please. This is just an indication from our assessment as the city of Ekurhuleni when we developed our alien invasive species and control plan to say we needed to know what is it that we have, so that then we are able to mitigate it accordingly, and also to also look at the drivers of the species coming into the city. Obviously, having our ORF into Tambo Airport in our jurisdiction, that already is an entry point for most of the species. So, and also the growth in trade and everything. So that really makes it a pathway for the species and to come in. And also you can see here the composition on the chart that I have is that 76% of alien invasive species in Ecuador are basically plant species. So which then shows you the pictures that I showed you before. And most of these ones are in our aquatic system. So you can imagine then, obviously, the cost of removing and controlling the species, and also the cost of the species on the ecological functioning of the ecosystem, and also on human livelihoods who are depending on this ecosystem for fishing or doing any other things, so that they can feed their families. So the impact is quite severe. And obviously then, for the water that you must now get in your tap, it means these plants drink up more water. Like, for example, it is estimated that blue gums drink about 80 to 200 liters of water on average per day. So you can imagine if the species continue to just consume our water resources, what we'll end up with is nothing, taking into consideration already we are a water scarce country. So that is really some of the really disturbing stats that we have. Next slide, please. Then how do you then link alien invasive species and climate change as a threat to nature and also to water resources? And there's not really much research done in terms of the connectivity of the two, because they've always been taken as a separate thing, to say climate change is a threat to nature and also our water resources and alien invasive. But in terms of spreading, climate change, they impose the rate at which alien invasives must now invade the system. The changing weather patterns, make this invasive nature of some of the species, exaggerated. And also, I'll go back to Fred's presentation, because of maybe because we are also sitting in a metropolitan area, our aquatic system, they are highly nutritious. Then they make it a conducive environment then for alien invasive species to also, spread further. And also the changing weather patterns that we've been having. So it just makes it worse. And also the alien invasive, in terms of the fire regimes, especially in areas that are becoming warmer and warmer, and some of them are susceptible to fire. So then, it is also then linked to climate change, to say, some of the species, because it's getting drier and drier, now we are getting species that they can, catch fire even during this time of the year and the season. So those are some of the links, and that sustainable development can only be achieved through stepped-up action to reverse the loss of nature. And the only way we can do that is to actually work on the impacts that climate change has on nature, climate change has on our aquatic system. So all these things, they make into us what we want to achieve in terms of having to meet the target of producing water to our people and conserving nature. Some of it, what you take, somebody said the other day, you take 2 steps forward, then 3 steps forward, because of the invasive nature of some of the species. And I'm not sure if you colleagues are aware, even if you've seen the Valdem currently in its state is actually covered with water hyacinth. The same applies with Hartepias Spot Dam. Obviously, then us sitting on a continental divide, we contribute to this. So those are some of the things that we also then to say, with the aquatic system that we have, we need to be part of the delivering solution to climate solution, and also to some of these challenges that we have with alien invasive species. First of all, we need to make sure that we reduce the nutrient levels in the water. By doing that, you need to make sure that your wastewater treatment plants are highly maintained. So whatever it is that they release into the system is not highly nutritious water, nutrient water, then that makes it then a conducive environment for alien invasive land to then spread, and all those other impacts that come with it. So next slide, please. Okay, we still just continuing on that. There was a report that came out recently. I think it was out about a week ago, about the state of alien invasive into species in South Africa, and the report really paint quite a sobering statistics, and it just shows you also in terms of now how we always receiving new alien invasive species. So, and these are then exaggerated by changing weather increases of flooding and drought in many places, because then when we have flooding in many areas, then it becomes a pathway for alien invasive species to travel. So it may create a conducive environment. For example, the same report also calculated the economic cost of the introduction of some of the species. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with short bowl boa that was actually came in through the trade via Durban Hub, and ultimately it entered into a city, and it is affecting all our indigenous trees, and the cost of managing and control that particular species alone, it was recently estimated to be 350 billion. So you can imagine, not only does alien invasive species impact on in terms of how we should be, the money that should be used to do other things like creating employment or looking at other sectors that really could use that money, but then we are spending that money then in removing this alien invasive species that are a threat to our biodiversity, taking into consideration that the economical contribution of the biodiversity sector that it contribute to the country. Then if we don't then control this alien invasive species, then ultimately our whole biodiversity sector is impacted. So also the alien invasives and the impact of climate change, it reduces the carrying capacity of some of these grazing lands that are supposed to be used for agricultural productivity, because they overtake the area, or even for fishing. If then you have the whole dam that is covered with an aquatic weed, aquaculture can't happen in that. So you can imagine that. So the impact also there for livelihoods is quite severe. So then it is essential that alien invasives are incorporated into climate change policy. So we don't look at them as one risk to nature, because the two are really interlinked, taking into consideration how, when the weather pattern is like this, it exaggerates the spread, and also the growth of some of the species. So, and also to just monitor and the eradication measures. We have programs in South Africa like Working for Water, which have done really well. However, we need to be proactive, because one of the things to keep alien invasive species and also their spread is also to manage them, to control them as they start to invade the area, instead of them having to taken over the area. Then it becomes a costly, then now you are not able to manage them because there's a seed bank and they've already spread. So in terms of that, monitoring need to be key in terms of us now having to then manage this the spread of alien invasives into our aquatic systems. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think basically it was I thought it was the last slide, not being in control sometimes. So yeah, basically I was just highlighting, the just the link between climate change and nature, and also what then the alien invasive does. So it just really even the fire regime that I mentioned earlier, that to say, they're impacted on. So we really need to make sure that all our system, in particular aquatic system, they are functioning effectively and efficiently, so that they can then contribute to the conservation of biodiversity in nature, then contribute to water resources in our country, and also and mitigate the climate change impact. Because if all our aquatic system as well are invaded by alien invasive species, then they are not able to act as mitigating the floods and everything. So then, it becomes all our work, the ecosystem services that the hydrological features are supposed to serve, it becomes in vain. So it is a work that we are continuing to do as the city of Ekurhuleni, and we are doing an integrated approach in terms of having to control alien invasives, and also what the impact of climate change and nature has is just to make sure that we control those, and yeah. So the challenge is also the human capacity and also finances of having to constantly, because when you are dealing with natural resources, it's a constant thing. You must always monitor, and you remove today, it grows tomorrow. So those are some of the things that we are faced with. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm not sure if there's the extra slide. Yes, thank you so much, colleagues. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mankodi, for that. We are now I'm going to hand over to our colleague, Dora Marema at Salga, the head of municipal sustainability, to then field some of the questions and then to do the closing remarks. Dora, over to you.
No, thank you very much. And thank you, Mankodi. This is really eye-opening, right? So because a lot of dams, as you say, they are really all covered in green, but I think many of us just do not have, we cannot wrap our minds around the extent of the problem, and again the cost related to trying to eliminate these species. It almost sounds like an impossible task to take, and I can only just think about how can we mitigate, getting this species getting into our ecosystem. But I'm going to then open this session right now to the questions to Mankodi. Please feel free to raise your hand. Satna, please assist me to identify the hands. Any questions, colleagues? Please go ahead. Diteboho, I see your hand, and is it a hand? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to ask.
Please go ahead.
Mankodi, can you just give us an idea of what exactly the city is doing to address the invasive alien species? I know there's some programs that you mentioned that you're doing. How is that being financed, and what are the challenges that you're facing? And are there any other partners outside of the city that you're working with to deal with invasive species, particularly the water hyacinth, which just propagates itself overnight and so rapidly as soon as it's removed? Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Diteboho, for that question. As the city of Ekurhuleni, in terms of our operation, we have set aside operation budget to deal with the managing alien invasive species, and we use integrated method, which is your mechanical method, where we have acquired big harvester machines that really goes and remove this alien invasive, particularly in our aquatic system, that remove them. And we have employed a EPWP workers that are employed on contractual basis, and that are going to manually remove. And some of the partners that we've entered with in terms of removing it, because as I've shown you that, you know, nature has no boundaries, river system have no boundaries, so they affect even our neighbors. So we've partnered with Rhodes University, the Center for Biological Center for Diversity, where we are using the natural enemy for alien invasive species, which is like you're releasing bugs like your megamalas into into these plants, that then they become natural enemies to the species. So we've partnered with those, and we are working with National Department of Environmental Affairs, Forestry and Fisheries, that then they have also through their contractors have identify some of the sites in Ekurhuleni where then they are busy removing and everything. That's part of the Working for Water project. And also we have you know, stakeholders, you know, communities that are really passionate, because some of this hydrological system that are impacted, there are people, you know, the people's the estate values. You build your house next to aquatic system, because then, you know, the aesthetic and also the value of your property. So then you have communities that take it upon themselves to really remove them, so that then, because then it affects their assets. So we have those active stakeholders, particularly around the communities, that want to protect their assets, then that assists the municipalities, because with the resources that we have, we can only do so much. So also as part of our operation, we also get external service providers to assist, because as you've mentioned with alien invasive species, it particularly in summer, it just, the growth is superimposed. And one of the tricks that you must do with water hyacinth, for example, you must not let it to flower, because once you remove it, like you are pruning the species. You remove it, you are saying new growth must come in, and taking into consideration how nutrients our water the resources are, it makes it a conducive environment. So yeah, that's basically how we manage them. Thanks.
Chair, there's another hand from Kopano as well.
Okay, please, Kopano, and I see also another hand. There are two hands. Please go ahead. Kopano is first.
Okay, thanks, Dora, and thanks, Mankhodi, for the presentation. I think it was really informative. So as you were presenting, I was just thinking Ekurhuleni just as a special case, in that it's got a lot of small towns scattered around the jurisdiction of the municipality. And in my observation, there's been a proliferation of informal settlements in some of these towns. What I just wanted to understand, perhaps, what the city is doing, the steps that it's taking to while preventing the proliferation of this informal settlement. What are they doing to prevent the encroachment of these settlements on ecosystems and around waste disposal services? And are there any engagements or involvement of communities in biodiversity conservation efforts from the city side? Thank you.
Thanks, Kopano, for that question. I think informal settlement, you know, popping up everywhere is not unique to the city of Ekurhuleni. I think just was it last month, the National Department, we actually launching you'll rectify me, climate change strategy for human settlement. And one of the case we went to was a Gulf Spread catchment. And as you know, Gulf Spread catchment is it's within it's within our 3 jurisdiction of City of, it falls within City of Ekurhuleni coming from Tembisa side, City of Joburg coming from Ivory side, and then we are now feeding into City of Tshwane, and we become the bad ones that are now taking all these things into City of Tshwane. So what we are doing, obviously, then it's a constant compliance issues. One of the things that we have to do, we sensitize the communities. When you see informal settlement popping up, you alert EMPD so that they can remove. And remember also in terms of human rights, once people they encroach an area in the city for a particular period, I'm not sure in terms of the hours of the day, then you can't move them. You must find an alternative for them. That becomes a challenge for municipalities. And taking into consideration human, housing provision is not even a competency of municipalities, but of provincial government, and that then becomes a challenge. Also, in terms of encroaching in ecosystem, the Atlas spray gas spray that I was talking about, every single year, the first rain that we receive, because of people encroaching into the flood line, we get the floods and people then being impacted by those floods, and now we must then the risk that comes with that, and also having to emergency funds of having to remove them. That is a constant struggle for the city, and also for us. The only thing we do as the City of Ekurhuleni, from encroaching into open land system, is environmental education and awareness to sensitize our communities to say, if you go and build your house in a river or next to it, it doesn't matter where you are, the first rain that comes. But because of the socio-economic challenges that we are faced with as a country, then you remove them in this year's rainy season. Then the next thing you come, the next rainy season, you see people, the shakes that pops up. So it's a challenge that needs the eyes and the ears on the ground, and they need all the communities, and all the stakeholders involved to report, because sometimes of some of this informal settlement, you find that they've been there for a month, and once it's reported to the city officials, then they've already settled in. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you so much, Mankgodi. Absolutely. You've touched on a lot of things there in your response. Fritjof, if you can go ahead with your question. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Yes, Mankgodi, how is private sector sort of engaged in sort of dealing with alien species? I'm specifically looking at the water hyacinth. When I was I worked in Uganda for 9 years. I mean, they had massive problems there. But there's uses like taking water hyacinth into reactors for biogas, and I think the private sector has also looked at the fiber in that being an excellent use for oil spills as a fabric, just like I think it was in Cape Town with invasive species of the blue gum, using the tree trunks and turning that into wood pellets or something as a source of either mulching or for wood pellets or something like that. So just to see whether that's part of the solution, sort of going out for private sector.
Yes, we do have active private sector. Some of the areas, particular business, they also sponsor some of the operation in terms of removing them. And I think Ditebo also asked in terms of partnership. I forgot to also mention to say we also have a very active businesses that also want to utilize the biomass of either water hyacinth or black water, so for other things. So we already have that active, and it actually was initiated by the National Department of Environmental Affairs when they looked at all these alien invasives that are popping up everywhere, and they then did a call for proposal where then they are giving opportunity for people who really want to use the alien invasive biomass for any crafts or anything like for biogas. And we have one of the lady who's very active, who's established a business who is using water hyacinth biomass and turn it into charcoal briquettes, and is supplying some of the big corporates that are within the city of Ekurhuleni to meet their ESG targets. So we've got that and a lot of other partners. So yes.
Thank you, Mankgodi. Absolutely, and I see a thumbs up from Fritjof there. Colleagues, we're going to now close off. We've gone a bit over time, but I think the discussions were necessary to just get us to understand the intricate interconnectedness of the different challenges that our cities face. You know, today's discussion has really shown us that whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Tanzania, whether you're anywhere across the continent, there's intricate connections between our water resources, the natural ecosystems that sustain them, and the ever-changing climate and its impacts that we see increasing daily. We've seen how human activities, particularly around rapid urbanization, informality, industrial processes, can disrupt this delicate balance. And we've seen that the challenges are really across the board. It's not just South African cities or Tanzanian cities, but it's really this region, this Africa region that is rapidly urbanizing, that will continually see these many challenges. But we're also encouraged by the solutions that we're seeing our cities embark on, and the partnerships that are forged to address these challenges. And you know, these multi-stakeholder partnerships where government agencies, government departments, business, communities can really join forces to tackle water, nature, and climate-related issues. Financing, of course, always remains a challenge. And, you know, we've seen from Fritjof's presentation that, you know, there might be some creative approaches in how you partner with the private sector, and perhaps there can be some innovation there around different models for funding. And Mankgodi highlighted the importance of, you know, connecting with academia and research institutions around finding solutions towards some of these challenges. So thank you very much to our speakers and our attendees. We appreciate you sharing your lunch with us. Our next lunchtime chat will be in May. No, sorry, in April. I'm already in April in my head. So we're going to have one in April, and you will get the invitation for that. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.